So you guys, I was sitting somewhere. I forgot where. I think I might have, I don't know. I cannot remember where I was sitting, where I was looking at the television and the volume wasn't turned up, but this story was on the news. And, without hearing the volume, kind of just reading what was on the screen, I was like, oh, okay, another case of a white person having fantasies and desires and admiration for school shooters and wanting to do the same. And now this isn't just restricted to this woman who is supposed to be 18. She's going on 40, named Sol Pais, who she made, some journals. She had a bunch of guns, and her goal was to do a Columbine style shooting. This, mind you, is near the anniversary of the Columbine shooting. Now, she's 18-year-old, okay? So they said she prompted a massive manhunt. The FBI became aware of her, and then she ended up dead after a manhunt ensued. She ended up killing herself. They found her in Colorado. They had to close down the schools. We know the way these things originally go, but it's very interesting to see this mentality playing out several times, present day and history, and nothing being done about it, it not being addressed, it being chalked up as mental illness. But notice how, even though they constantly say, oh, this is a mental illness issue, notice how nothing has been done to address the mental illness. No legislation has been passed or anything. There's no there's no FBI profiling case on white people who engage in mass shootings. There's no real media alerting you to this, or no public interest in doing something to deter this. That's why I say you have to really pay attention to not only the narratives they put out, but what they plan to do about certain narratives. Because if you feel like this is an issue of mental illness, then you should be doing something on a mass level to address the mental illness. But the reality of it is they're not going to, because if they address the mental illness in relation to mass shooters, then they're not going to have a choice but to look to the white community. And then that's going to deconstruct the whole, they're genetically superior, they're more moral, they're less violent, because then you're going to have they're going to have to give an explanation as to why, number one, they have so many mental illnesses, and number two, why their mental illnesses, more so than anyone else, is leading them to have fantasies about killing mass amounts of people. They're just not going to do that. But they know that general society is not really thinking on that level. So we won't sit here and break that down and hold them accountable. Although we know that a while back, they were talking about profiling Muslims and talking about profiling. And I remember, I think Van Jones asked them, or someone asked them, okay, well, if you are going to profile mass shooters, then you would have to profile conservative white males. Are you going to do that? And the response was no. So they'll pathologize everyone else, but they won't pathologize their own. And it's because society doesn't hold them accountable to that. Now, there is a video here that I want to get to. We'll get to this video. We'll see what's going on, and then we'll come back for some
commentary. Tonight, the threat is over. Authorities say they found the body of Sol Pais in a remote part of Colorado.
At this point, it looks as if she was alone, that she took her own life with the weapon that she procured.
The manhunt lasted more than 24 hours, forcing hundreds of schools to cancel classes today.
I thought it was good. We probably wouldn't have gone to school today anyways.
More than 500,000 students were told to stay home, including those at Columbine High.
We are used to threats, frankly, at Columbine. This one felt different. It was different.
Well, there was no threat to a specific school. The FBI said Pais was infatuated with Columbine, armed, and posed a credible threat. The 18-year-old high school student lived in Florida, but on Monday, authorities say she flew to Denver, buying a pump-action shotgun at Colorado Gun Broker in Littleton. The owner says Pais purchased the gun legally and went through a full background check.
It was a real normal transaction. There was no flags at all.
Today, investigators collected evidence from her Florida home. Police credit her family with providing valuable information.
First, I would like to express the family's grief for the situation. They are actually grateful that no one else is hurt.
Last night, her father did not come outside, but briefly spoke with reporters. NBC News found what appear to be Pais's online journals. For months, she wrote disturbing entries about violence, Columbine, and wanting to get a gun. Authorities have not confirmed if they are hers.
When a background check hits that she's purchased a gun, now it all ramps up to the activity level that we saw.
This all comes just days before the 20th anniversary of the Columbine tragedy. Frank DeAngelis was principal at the time.
We have that famous saying, we are Columbine, and during times like this, it resonates loudly and clearly.
Students will return to school tomorrow. Here at Columbine, there will be heightened security. Memorial events planned for later this week are still moving forward. The focus is on remembering the 13 victims who died 20 years ago. Lester.
Joe Fryer in.
Now, did you guys notice how when they said they found online journals, they had to find a way to insert in there that they don't know if it was hers? Now, they do know if it was hers, but what they're trying to do is say, oh, she may or may not have done this. We don't want to say that it was hers, because then we know that she's sitting there at the age of 18, infatuated with violence. That's what she's doing. So what would this say about their psyche? And that's what we need to consider. But these are things that we unfortunately overlook, that we really should not, because our mentality is somehow leading us to only pathologize each other. And that's very problematic. But you guys heard that they said she was infatuated with the Columbine High School massacre. Understand that you rarely see stories like this coming out about other people. And then that's why I want to emphasize it. And even if you do, again, it's like an exception to the rule. By and large, whenever you see cases like this where the sole goal is to cause mass destruction, fantasizing about and admiring people who have murdered and slaughtered tons of people in senseless violence, there's no motivation. Again, nothing motivated her except simply the desire to do it. And this is why this isn't going to get more attention. And we could be on YouTube using that as for the platform that it is, which is more popular than mainstream media. We could be using this to change the narrative and show who really is the face of violence in this country, but we never do that. Black men are pathologized all the time to have a innately criminal mentality and nature, yet we're looking at and seeing in real life who does that. And it really is younger, old, male or female, foreign or domestic, they're all the same. That's why I started saying that, because you have to recognize patterns throughout history. You have to recognize present patterns. And what I recognize is, while they may orchestrate certain events, some of them, very, very questionable, to say that other people do these things to try and normalize it. The reality of it is this is most prevalent and always have been in this one group of people, and that's the dominant society. So her thing was to buy a pump action shotgun and ammunition. And I took note of the part about the gun too, selling her the gun, because they have this whole thing where the problem isn't the shooters, because they're not going to pathologize their own people. They're saying, oh, the problem is the guns. We need to make it harder to get guns. But he said she went through the legal process. She already went through the background check. So what more would you need? It's not like they're illegally obtaining guns. And then that shows that this is purely pathology. She doesn't need to have anything in her background. She doesn't need to ever have committed any type of crime. The reality of it is this pathology is there and is being ignored. And it keeps happening over and over and over, but it sometimes seems like general society has a spell cast on them where they can't see that this global minority is running around literally wreaking havoc. And that doesn't mean all of them are doing it, because of course all of them are not. But if you look at the rate of them doing it, if you look at all of these situations and break it down and compare it racially, you're going to see overwhelmingly they're doing it. That speaks to their pathology. Again, this doesn't have anything that motivated her to do this except for just a desire to do it. Now, I want to go back to that statement really quickly where, you know, they said they had an online journal, but they didn't know if it was hers. Now, look at what this says. In an apparent journal signed with her full name, which law enforcement has not confirmed belongs to her. So who would have the motivation to go on there and sign her name on some online journal just for the sake of doing it? This is how uncode they are. And we don't employ the same code. You know, we kind of think the same way they think in reference to each other, but they're protecting her. They're like, oh, okay, even though it has their name signed on it, it might not belong to her. When have they ever given that benefit of the doubt to anyone else? But it says Pais appears to describe feeling miserable and out of place, along with having thoughts of suicide and a desire to procure weapons. The journal entries are dated June 2018 through March 2019. So they're going to give her the mental illness excuse, but they're not going to tell you what they're going to actually do to address mental illness. I wish I could get a gun by the end of the summer, one entry reads. Other entries reference plans being made. Another shows drawings of one of the Columbine gunmen, Dylan Klebold. Had a dream last night about the future, and it was eye-opening. Was only a week away from the day, and I had my, she probably said effing shotgun, and entry reads, a possible reference to the anniversary of the Columbine massacre. Investigators say Pais was obsessed with the shooting at Columbine High School that left 12 students and a teacher dead 20 years ago this week, and said on Tuesday evening that she posed a credible threat to the Denver community and schools. But see, the thing of it is they're not going to address their own pathology, so they're always going to be a threat to each other. But look, this is one of her drawings. She said, I'm not sick, but I'm not well. Frail and bedazzled. Because of her comments and her actions, because of her travels here to the state, because of her procurement of a weapon immediately upon arrival here, we considered her to be a credible threat, certainly to the community and potentially to the school, Dean Phillips, FBI special agent in charge of the Denver field office, said at a press conference. But note, they're not telling you what put her on their radar to begin with. This is the other piece of the drawing that she made. But see, I interpret her statement, she's not sick, but she's also not well. That's probably speaking to her mental state, because they don't have to have a physical anomaly to have something going on with their psyche. And that's telling you there's something like, of all the things that you could fantasize about, of all the things that you could be obsessed about, look at what she's obsessed about. And again, I've done stories where you've had people who wanted and aspired to be serial killers. They just wanted to kill their family so they could be known for causing mass destruction. You had a Marine over there. His goal was to kill as many people as he could. Kill everybody on the planet. But these things are always overlooked. They're never really addressed. She has had an infatuation with Columbine and the perpetrators of Columbine. He added she has made comments to that effect, but she hasn't identified a specific threat to a specific school. Of course they're not going to say she did, because this is a white girl. After receiving word of the FBI investigation on Tuesday, more than 20 schools, including Columbine, went on lockout, meaning exterior doors were locked due to a threat outside, but all scheduled classes and activity inside were held as they normally would be. Now, again, as I guarantee you, as this story develops, assuming that it will, because they may just say, oh, okay, well, whatever, we'll just brush it by. They're going to pin this on mental illness. Black people will overlook it. They'll continue to engage in these meaningless battles and fights against spookies and ray-rays and educated lanes. Meanwhile, Black men are being demonized and made as the face of criminality, and stuff like this is going unchecked by our community. Pointing these things out will be one very effective means of fighting back. And it doesn't require that you get physical. It just requires that you stop tearing down your community and start shedding light on the ones who really need light shed on them. But you guys let me know what you think about this. Thank you for your support. I'll see you in the next one.